morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. You're watching Living With Us, and I'm your host, Sharon Mundia. We're here at Park Inn by Radisson. It's a chilly morning, but we're about to warm it up with a great conversation with two men, given that yesterday was Father's Day. I've got two fathers with me here, and I'm about to just ask them everything I can about fatherhood, so I get to understand what it's like being on the other side. I have got the iconic writer and editor at The Elephant and a satirist as well, humorist, Oyunga Pala. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here, especially after we had your wife here a few months ago. Yeah, and then of course I've got Abel Amunga, who's an actor and a musician and a voiceover artist, and he's also a father of a young lady. They both have daughters. Welcome, Abel.
Thank you, Sharon.
Why don't you introduce your children so that we get to know a little bit about what stage of fatherhood you're at right now?
I've got a daughter who is just about 8 months.
Yeah.
This month, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Her name is Talo.
Talo.
Yeah.
8-month-old Talo.
Yeah.
All right. And what about you?
Before I introduce my daughter, I would like to say congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, because on behalf of your daughter, because mine wished me, yours is yet to wish you.
I know.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Mine is called Ruth Matete. She's 33 years. She's a musician.
All right.
Yeah.
It's interesting that there's a 33 year gap. Yeah. So I'm sure your experience of fatherhood will be vastly different, but also similar in some ways. First question, which is a really important question I have for you. What is the best Father's Day gift you've received so far? Or what would be the ideal Father's Day gift for you? I guess in your case, Oyunga, we'd have to be speaking, what would be ideally the kind of Father's Day gift?
First of all, I never got a Father's Day.
Yeah.
You know, Father's Day is just right next to the the World Toilet Day.
Oh, I did not know that, but interesting.
So I don't think I've ever got a gift on Father all my life.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's deliberately forgotten. I don't know if we don't make enough of demands.
Yeah.
A nice whiskey would be great, but it's never come up.
Okay,
yeah.
Nice whiskey, all right. And what about you?
Well, I think the best gift I've received on Father's Day, which usually comes as a surprise for me, is the many wishes from the very many well wishes, but I have never received any tangible gift, I should say. Maybe.
What?
Never.
Is there even such a tradition as gifting fathers on Father's Day?
Yeah.
Do they get gifts?
Do you send your father a gift?
Oh, we have. Let me tell you. Yes. You know what? Sometimes it's a lunch, and sometimes it's a gift. But there is like an appreciation of sorts. But I don't know if it's really ingrained in our culture to go out and like buy gifts. But I think even if it's something as, you know, you did a painting in school, I'm sure, I don't know if Ruth ever had those moments, you know, when she was younger.
Well, I have a lot of stuff in my house, Sharon, and some of the stuff have been given by my daughter in the previous years. So maybe one of them fell on her Father's Day. I should say, maybe wherever she is, she's probably wondering, Dad, I brought you a gift, and you're saying you've never received
right now
a gift.
she's like,
So let me just stay safe and say maybe one of those gifts in the house should have probably been one of those.
And I'm sure you can play this back for Talo as well.
Yeah,
she'll be like, all right, by age 2, she'll be like an iconic gift to give her.
Train her quickly.
All right, so I want to start off by understanding a little bit about your relationship with your fathers. What would you say, how would you describe it, and what would you say was the biggest lesson that you learned from your dads? Oyunga, you can go first.
So my dad passed on when I was 15 years old, but an incredible guy, so completely present all through. Living from a very different time where the fathers were very overwhelmed because they had so much to do. So what would now call a traditional African male father figure. So the guy he takes care of all the business, you know what I mean? But then in many ways he broke a lot of stereotypes for me because I saw him cook. He made a lot of time for us, you know, and he always made it work, you know. I mean, he had a civil service job, you know, so there's only so much time to have. But he was doing things that at the time I didn't realize were really important. Like he would come home for lunch, because he was a hospital administrator at Kenyatta Hospital, and it wasn't too far from where we stayed, somewhere near Adams Arcade.
Yeah.
And he would come home for lunch, and so we'd come home from school and come home from lunch. So he became a regular presence, and it wasn't until he passed on that he sort of realized how active he was in this role. So I have the fortune of having a really enlightened dad. So literally all my experience of fatherhood that as I've known it, I always just reference back to him. So I was lucky in that regard.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. And what about you, Abel?
You are lucky.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was a great guy. He is a great guy because my dad is still alive. Sorry about your dad's demise. My dad is 96 right now.
Oh, wow.
I lost my mom at 80, like 8-9 years ago. Okay. But my dad is still alive and is still strong. In the early years, as we were growing, my dad has been a farmer. He's been a peasant. We've been brought up in a very, very humble family, and therefore most of the farming stuff, my dad had to take all of us along. However young you are, you end up in the shamba. One thing I know about my dad is he's been very strict. We've been brought up with Christian values. We know the Bible. We know the Bible despite the fact that we had to get at some age where we rebelled, but the word still was retained inside of us. So my dad has been a great role model when it comes to morality, when it comes to family unity, because I remember every time my dad came back home in the evenings, he would, whatever time it is, even if you guys are asleep, he will wake up everyone and say, we have to gather up for a fellowship and a devotion.
Oh, wow.
Every single night. We wake up scrubbing our sleepy, wet eyes and sit there with our dad, and my mom would be there complaining, you have to wake them up, can't we do this in the morning, is the world ending today? So we'd just sit there, and my dad would say, let us first of all sing, in the middle of the night, let us first of all sing one hymn, what a friend we have in Jesus. So we would sing a hymn, 1, 2, 3 verses. My mom would say, why can't you just sing one verse? And then,
Oh, wow.
and he would, one thing I vividly remember is he would tell mom, I'm sorry, I shouted at you in the morning. And my mom would say, yes, I also forgive you. I walked away on you, forgive me. And we learned a lot through my dad's humble fatherly upbringing. So he's been a great role model, despite the fact that once in a while he would be very harsh. And we even nicknamed him. We nicknamed him Generali, an army general, because he was a dictator and a commander when it came to certain issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I salute my dad, and
Wow.
I never got to wish him Happy Father's Day though, but let me take this opportunity to wish him Happy Father's Day.
Oh, bless. So what are the key values that you picked up from your father that you chose to implement in your fatherhood journey? Are there certain key things that you saw in him that you're now implementing? Yeah,
for me there's a long list. Long list. I mean, I think top of it is just sheer responsibility. He took care of his business. So we didn't lack for food in the house. We were never chased out of school because of lack of school fees. So he was really on top of stuff,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later when I realized how much he was earning and how much he was able to stretch his shilling that I realized, wow, those are serious sacrifices he was making. There's certain modesties that he had, but it was in order for everybody else around, because he came from a relatively large family of 6, and then he was an elder son. So by virtue of his stature, then and just covering for a lot of his brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So that was one. Number 2, I think he was a really disciplined guy, because he did love his white cup, but I never saw him stagger. I never saw him wasted. So those certain aspects, even when I started my interaction with alcohol later in life, was sort of very civilized in a way. So I never had the problem, say, through my college years of abusing drink, because I had a proper example. The other, I guess, fundamental thing would be just social cohesion, like he really kept family together. So he would deliberately go out to check out relatives. So we then ended up knowing all our cousins and all our relatives. And he'd walk across the spectrum, like, so if we had a relative in Karibangi or Korogosho, would be there. So he treated everybody equally. So then I ended up growing with this sort of very egalitarian sort of mindset, where he killed the classism. It was very easy for us as a middle class family to sort of start say, oh, those poor people, you know, but him, that's your uncle, that's your father, that's your mother. So it was beautiful. And I guess the last of those is a whole list, but the last of the identity. He's very sort of grounded in the idea of who are you from, you know, your Africanness, you know, you respect that as an individual. Huh? Don't forget who you are, don't get lost. You have a history, respect it, you know, fall back on it, you know, reference. There's a place called home, you know, where's your grounding? So all that stuff. He never actually said it. He never like sat down and gave me a lecture, but he lived it.
That's so incredible that in 15 years he was able to have this kind of impact, and through his actions more so than anything else.
I think pretty much by the time I was 10, we were formed in a sense of the identity was formed, but just by there's something now that I call presencing. He had the ability to be present. So you always had a reference point. And he just had the ability to be present. And I realized his biggest investment, because back in the days when you think, how come we can't get bicycles, you can't get the usual parks that kids are supposed to get. He realized his thing was just time. He dedicated he didn't wait time, he was always there. So that's what made the difference.
That's the best thing you could ever offer anyone, time and presence, to really be in the moment. Wow, Abel, what about you? Do you now wake up to sing hymns? But is that partly what you took?
Well,
what did you take?
I think I share many sentiments with my brother here. My dad taught me Christian values, I should say. I repeat that. And number two, presence, like he just said. He would go to the shamba, but during lunchtime we would all rush back home and we would sit together and eat together. And then the same thing I said, whenever he came back, he would gather all of us together. So he tried to create time, because knowing very well that probably the following day he would be rising up in the morning, he would create this time, however late at night, to make sure that we see him. So I cannot recall any day that I missed to see my dad on a single day. And apart from the days he traveled out of town or something.
Wow.
But I saw him barely every single day.
That is incredible.
Yes. Number two, the way he treated my mom. Yes. I learned a lot through that.
Can you describe a little bit about that?
Number one, by submitting. Well, men are not supposed to submit. Men are supposed to love. But I think also love comes with submission. Because if you love, that is an automatic submission. You would not be driven by your ego because you're a man. And that's why he would be the first one to apologize to my mom in case he wronged her. He would be the first one to say, hey, I realized I shouted at you in the morning. So I'm here. Before I sleep, I want to say, I am sorry. And my mom would say, yeah, I also walked away on you. And because my mom would not apologize before my dad. So my dad apologized to prompt her to bring out her apology. So yes, the way he treated her, the way he was responsible as far as supplying for the family is concerned. Because my mom was just a trader, mere trader. She dealt with grocery. She used to sell bananas and vegetable. But my dad would go out. He would go out to the shamba. He would go out to wherever place. And most times he came home, he never came empty-handed. He was a poor man, but he made sure he comes back with a piece of cassava, like you see in the Nigerian movies, or a banana or something. Yes.
What great role models.
Yes,
I mean, it's incredible, and I can only imagine the kind of impact it's now had on you both as fathers, which we will get into, but we've got to take a break, but we'll be right back in a moment. Ladies and gents, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gents. We're here at Park Inn by Radisson, and post Father's Day, we're having a conversation about fatherhood, and I've got Abel Amunga and Oyunga Pala And before the break, we were talking about their experience with their fathers and what it was like. But now I want to understand what fatherhood has been like for you. And I ask this because I believe it's different for women, because I think from the moment you're pregnant, there's always that reminder literally inside you that you are now a mom, and there's a shift that happens almost immediately. But I don't know if the shift is that immediate for men. And in my experience, it sort of is, it takes a while for them to be like, wait a second, maybe when, I don't know, when the baby is born, or maybe when they feel the first kick. And so my question for you is, do you remember the moment that fatherhood sort of hit you in the face, like, ooh, I am a dad? Do you remember that moment? We can start with, actually, let's start with you, Abel.
Yeah, I remember it like yesterday, because I was just done with my high school. Just cleared my form for exams. then I had this news, bam, you're going to be a dad.
So from the moment you heard that, you were like, ooh.
Yes. Me, dad.
How old were you then?
21.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm like, me a dad at this age? Well, after a while, I had to embrace it. Yeah, so I used to go to college, and at the same time, I used to engage in casual jobs to make sure that I supply basics to my girlfriend. She wasn't my wife, she was my girlfriend. So she was still living with her mother, and I would make sure that throughout her pregnancy period, I would supply 20 shillings, 50 shillings, whatever I found, I was able to send every end of month. That was way back in 1985, yeah. So later on, I comfortably but gradually embraced the fact that, okay, I am a father. Yeah. And now when she was born, and then my mom called me and told me, you know what, you're now a father. You have a daughter, beautiful daughter. And I've already named her after your favorite grandmother. My favorite grandmother's name was Ruth. So my mom named her Ruth. That's when now I accepted everything.
What was it for you? Or do you remember the moment for you?
Yeah, because when you're older, obviously, you're a little bit more deliberate, huh? So there's no oops for at our age. It's like, okay, you know.
Sometimes there's oops. Have you not heard those stories?
Well, there is, but I guess, yeah, I know. It's like, oh,
very
yeah,
rare,
wow, yeah. But so it's a lot more deliberate. So there's a lot more. We have the luxury of planning, and then I was sort of very hands-on in this sort of pregnancy, to the point of I having got my version of pregnancy blues and morning sickness.
Really?
I picked up cravings I never had before.
They say that happens.
Yeah. So I don't have a sweet tooth, but I picked up a sweet tooth.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of. Then even my what do you call it? Waking up, yeah. I would have this odd hour. Yeah. Like, so when the kid would kick, I would sort of wake up. So I came through the process pretty ready, and then you see I've been, in a way, so I do a separation between becoming what we call a dad, like having your own biological kid, and fathering. Fathering is something I think I've done for a while, because I've always been the available uncle. You know, so for all my nephews and nieces, I was always the guy who was around. And then my bro passed on when he was about 8 years ago, and then his wife passed on a year after that, and they left 3 kids. So in a way, sort of, I moved into that position. So I had sort of quasi preparation of what it actually takes in terms of sort of the hands-on. But then they say there's nothing like your own child, you know, because other people's children, you give them back, you know. Your own child, you're stuck with the brat day in, day out. So it's a very different experience. But you get ready, you count the days, you wait, you know, you're in the delivery room, you see the baby come. It was a C-section, so then I end up being the first one to hold the baby, and in a way it clicks. What I think what I found really amazing was that the humanness of a baby. You know, now when a baby's it's still a fetus, it's sort of this abstract thing, and there's so many other things that you're not in control of. Like, that's why you say it actually becomes a sort of a divine moment, because there's so much you're not in control of, especially as a man in the delivery room. What are you going to do? What the most you can just say, what, strong, was a, I'm here, we're here, it's going to be okay.
It's like you're going to
And then the child comes, and you have, it's like it's a human being, because they make eye contact with you, you know, they communicate, they're alive, and it's suddenly like, wow. So this is the magic of the union. So at that point it switches, and then it just become, I guess, super protective. I remember when I was driving up from hospital, Aga Khan to where I was staying up in Valley Arcade, it must have been the slowest I've ever driven.
Yeah.
Because I was watching every freaking corner,
Yeah.
like in case anybody, like, where, you know, all the matatu guys are just being wagged at, you know, precious cargo in here. So yeah, so there's certain very sort of, you know, when you see the protectiveness of a mother cat,
Right.
sort of you move into that mode of very protective.
Yeah.
If you're ever doing anything in town, anything that involves physically walking, I always get hold of the baby. I always tell my wife, no, I've got it. You know? So there's always that. So that boots in very quickly. The rest, I think, is just what everybody else has done. It's just show up. And you make that choice every morning to show up. Every morning you make that choice to just show up in the child's life.
Right.
And then the rest you can do is just be present for as long as it's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Show up. As difficult as that might be
Yeah.
as well, and in terms of even being present, which you touched on,
Mm.
right? Because a lot of parents are there, but you're on your phone, you're on your laptop,
Yeah.
you're going to make that deal, close that
Mm.
deal, you know, so showing up
Is-
becomes even tougher, I think,
yeah.
in this day and age.
Mm.
And Abel, I'm curious to hear from you how different fatherhood has been over the past 33 years, from when she was born, and you know, and especially as a single dad now. I know at some point she came and was living with you, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what are some of the changes that you've witnessed, and not just on a personal level, but even in terms of society and the community? Because I think the way we were raised, the way our parents were raised, is not necessarily how we're raising our children in this day and age. So can you take me through that?
Yeah, before I do that, another thing we share with the Oyunga is I also embraced the sense of dad by virtue of being left with many nephews and nieces. Because I lost my sister more than 15 years ago, and my sister had 11 children. And
Wait a second.
yeah, she died as a result of abuse. The husband battered her to death, and later on he took his life. So I was left with all these kids. So I took up that role as well.
So
Till now,
yeah,
till today.
So that has training, huh?
very extremely. So my experience is not just limited to one child. It goes beyond that. So back to your question. I think I have learned to be a dad through a process. It's not a one-day learning. It's something that I'm still learning up to this very, very moment. And because of my experience with many children and many other who I pose as a role model to, a lot of youth nowadays call me dad, and that's like almost my nickname. Even on set, where I shoot, everywhere I go, people either first time they will call me Abel, but afterwards they'll call me dad or papa or something like that. So it's a process that I'm learning. And the difference between me and you is I try to put myself in the shoe of both a daddy and a mommy, and a provider, and a guide, and a role model. So that was quite conflicting, trying to do all these things at the same time. But slowly by slowly I managed. Yeah.
Managed pretty well.
Yeah.
Managed pretty well.
And what about, you know, Ruth is now 33,
Yes.
right? And so the act of fathering must have shifted or continued to shift the older that she got and the more that she evolved.
Yes.
And I imagine it must have also meant a little bit more letting go and
That's right.
until, and I think even parenting in general, it's a balance between being present and there,
Yes.
but also allowing them to fall and allowing them to pick themselves up.
Yes.
So was that ever a struggle for you, and sort of allowing, stepping out,
Yes, it
stepping
was.
away from that role
It
a
was.
little, just
Because when she came to my life, she was about 6 years old. Excuse me, and I started adjusting. First of all, we had to bond. She had been out of my life for a long time because I let her stay with her mom, who later on passed on, and I had to take her with me. Her mom was in a different marriage, so she ended up in my marriage. She ended up in my family. And now that she was exposed to a different marriage with a stepdad, and the relationship wasn't that good. It was most of the times, I think she went through a little bit of some abuse there. And then she came back to my family where I was with my wife, and now she ended up with a stepmother. So I am here trying to adjust. First of all, getting to know what kind of kid this is, and then secondly, getting to bring her close to me as a friend. Thirdly, trying to know which ways would be best to train her and nurture her. So during the prime years, it was just a matter of acclimatization to get to know her better and to have her get to know me better. And then later on, we bonded real quick, real quick. She became my best friend. She would share everything with me, every secret. And some of the secrets would even be embarrassing. Like, how dare you tell me something like this? Yeah. And then there came a stage where, now just skipped a big chapter here, when I ended up just me and her, the two of us. There came to a stage where I had to take up the role of a mother and dad, and dad at the same time, as she was growing up now, hitting her puberty stage. Now that is where the challenge came in. Now there are things I can't tell her on the face. Now I have to get help from a mature lady, a friend, who can come and tell her, or an auntie who can come and tell her, you know, this is what you're supposed to do as a girl, you know, you have to, your armpit, stuff like that. Yeah, so that was a challenge, trying to adjust to that. And then the issue of rebellion, you know, when they are, they've reached this teenage, and it's really hard to send a message to them just in one instant, like when they are growing up. So sometimes I would repeat the same thing over and over again, and then I would end up holding a cane. And that is the stage where I properly canned her. Yes. Sometimes she would even run away from the house. She would go, and I would say, just go. If you want to go, just go. I'm tired. And I wouldn't sleep that night. The following day, I would be all over looking for her. And then we would get back. I would sit her down, and the next day again, it's the same thing. So it was quite a challenge. Right. And then there reached a period where she realized, now I have been difficult. Now I am a grown-up. I need to give my dad an easy time. He's been there for me. He's supplied for me. He's loved me. And then we rebonded again. And that's what we have up to this very moment.
Wow. Okay. Oyunga, what would you say are some of the notable differences when it comes to being a father in the 21st century compared to how you witnessed your father, father back in his day?
Yeah, no. I think one of the things, the world is really different in terms of how it's just changed, kind of, how do I say, political, economic, and social realities. We grew up with the notion of the house and the home, right? And so the home was the village, the house was wherever it is that your dad moved from work. We grew up with a sense of fathers, you know, so there was a lot of uncles. There's a whole range. There were older cousins, older siblings, older cousins, whole range. So as a young child growing up, you've arranged a whole generation of, in a sense, you've arranged access to a village, even within the city, because the same village dynamics were sort of like transferred to the city. So we grew up in sort of very sort of safe environments, and because there's always somebody. If there's something my dad couldn't tell, there's an uncle. There's always a cheeky uncle. There's a smart uncle. There was a religious uncle. There was the joker. You know, yeah. All versions. Even dysfunction within the family. There's the successful one. There's the flop. You know, yeah. So you get that reality beautifully. What has happened to us now is we're in a very sort of individualized society because of this new neoliberal order. So it's me and me myself. I'm supposed to be the world, the entire world, as an individual. I want to provide to this kid. And we ourselves, in our different, as I listen to Abel's story, we're in our different stage of developments. We are growing with our children. It's not as though we have arrived. You know, there's parents, even grandfathers start again. When the first time you get a first grandchild, it's like you start again. Yeah. So what happens, which is why grandparents tend to be better parents than the actual parents. They're always nicer. Because all the mistakes they made as a parent, they fix it with their children's children. Huh? So it's a really hard time to bring up kids. Right. But I'm also cognizant that my father, for example, was brought up in a time of war, the Second World War. So we say that each generation has its own set of circumstances and challenges that it has to deal with, and we have to make choices. So yes, our generation has been completely assaulted by neoliberalism and the New World Order in terms of like technology. For example, my parents never had, it was almost impossible for me to stumble into pornography. I had to work so hard to find it. Now I found some really crazy buddies, and the most we get is one magazine. Yeah. Now, the child doesn't have to look for it. Oh, yeah. It will find them right there. They don't have to look for it. They just have been minding their own business. So the amount of assault is really different. The kind of society that we have now, back in the days, there's no way like somebody falls on I remember once when I was walking and a mother carrying a child on Riverside Drive just collapsed. And I'd passed her as I was going towards the shop. And it took me like all of about 10 minutes. When I came back, she was still lying down there. And there's a whole bunch of people watching. Yeah. Those were things that could never have happened. But this is the kind of society now we live in. So what it means for a lot of us is that we have to make sort of very conscious decisions of how we choose, and not just to parent, because I think this is the mistake we sort of make, is that to build communities. Because there's only so much you can do as an individual. It doesn't matter how strong. In fact, the stronger you are, the more support you need, because you get more. There's more stress levels. So we just have to remold our communities, because now Nairobi as it is an apartheid state. You guys of Westlands don't know what's happening in South B. Guys of South B, in fact, we're watching the news like everybody else. There's a fire going on in Grongod like last week. Right. My mother in the village is telling me, there's a fire going on in Grongod, and I'm down has to switch. Yeah. And it's literally less than 3 kilometers away from where I am. Yeah. So our world has changed. So we have to make new choices. We can't be stuck on our dad's models. Yeah. There's some great stuff there, but we have to create our own models to survive, or we're dead.
That's beautiful. We've got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to dive deeper into that and into understanding how it is that we need to be parenting, so that we do raise people who add value to communities and have that sense of community. But we've got to take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. We've been talking about fatherhood, and I've got Oyunga and Abel here. And before the break, we were talking about the need for community. I mean, Oyunga, you delved deep into how different the model is, and trying to raise a child in this day and age. And I think even before that, Abel had touched on the need for introducing other people in the process of raising his daughter, and introducing female figures and mother figures. I want to understand what raising a girl specifically means to you in this day and age, in a time where there's a lot of conversations and advocacy and a push for the woman being valued, being seen, being recognized for all that she is. And do you ever think of that as you're going through, as you're parenting? Is that ever at the back of your mind, how you choose to raise your daughter?
Cool. We'll start with Abel.
Yeah.
It's experience. We'll want to listen. Huh?
You've also been raising for the last 8 months. Thank you very much, Sharon. Yes. When I started raising up my daughter, Ruth, I realized that she was copying a lot of things from me. Talking, behaving. Then I sensed danger. That wasn't really good, because this is a girl I'm trying to raise. I look at other girls like Sharon out there, and I'm like, I want her to be like so-and-so. She can't be like me.
So what was she picking up? What kind of things?
Even the walking style. Even conversations. She would talk like a man. You understand?
Yeah. But what does that mean, in like talking like a man?
you know how gentle ladies are when it comes to conversations and arguments, but she would want to outdo, as in, I know she's a sanguine, but she would want, with the big voice and everything, she would, no, hapana, mimi sijasema hivyo. And I'm like, Ruth, tone down. Yeah. Then I realized, no, I think me being her role model, I think she's overcopying stuff from me. And I even would train her how to walk. I would say, Mom, tembea, go back, then walk like a lady now. Don't walk, yeah. Plus a lot other things that I can't remember. But I realized now she was being molded more into a man than a woman, and that's why I had to get intervention from other female figures from outside. And that's when I also realized that I need to sit her down. I need to study about bringing up a girl and just sit her down and guide her into how to grow up as a lady and as a girl. Sitting down, her sense of fashion, she would never want to wear a dress. She always wants to wear jeans and stuff. She doesn't want shoes like this. She wants sneakers. Like,
she's a bit of a tomboy.
Yeah. I've got to say, I was a tomboy growing up, and even outside. I mean, right now I'm sure in a dress and it's got a little bow and I've got shoes, but outside of that, I walked in with jeans and sneakers. And I'm curious to know if you still feel the same way now. If you feel, and I'm also wondering if Ruth today is still as loud and vocal when it comes to her points, or if or her point of view. Is she still? Did those traits stick with her?
She's still very loud and vocal. Yeah. The only difference is she's become quite a lady, because right now you can only find her maybe in some jumpers when she's from the gym or something, but she really knows how to wear. She chooses what to wear. She does her own makeup. She doesn't let anyone touch her face, and it's gorgeous. Yes.
I mean, obviously things have changed, huh? Excuse me. And if you talk about from the point of, say, the place of feminism right now, in terms of what would be, I suppose, third wave feminism right now. So I think one of the misconceptions that we have is this sense of competition and what we're really exposed to. So sometimes we realize it's people's worlds. Now, I've started realizing I have fortune, and I've become very careful about it even when I articulate my issues, because I grew up with very strong and steady women. Now, my sister is an exceptional case. My mother is an exceptional case. My aunties, in fact, the pioneers of my family are women. You know, so my real upbringing, people say you're brought up in my real upbringing happened in a kitchen. In kitchens, in many kitchens, where the guys were running in and up and down, you know, being sent, the fathers would send us to the kitchen to find out, hey, chakula jako tayari, you know, so we've always been sent around. So my real lessons, like my first 7, 8 years of life, is literally being brought up by women in a kitchen. My aunties, my sisters, my older cousins, and all that. Even my first protectors were my sisters, my older sisters, the ones nobody messed up with. Your nanny's sister, because the sisters were bad news. You know, the brothers you could negotiate with, the sisters were bad. So I grew up with an idea that the strength of the woman for me becomes I think it's important to make the distinction between the Caucasian way of looking at the women as weakness of women and sort of like at least what my training was. So not to what do you call it? Not to disqualify what has happened in terms of systemically, in terms of gender bias, gender discrimination, huh? But so in my making, at no point were women weak. In fact, if anything, you know, even within my own setup, my grandmother was the last word. The fathers, the grandfathers could make noise, but very clearly, really, it's the grandmother who's the last word on issues. So when we're having a funeral, it's the mothers we have to make comfortable. You know, the men can do all the planning, but ultimately we have to back the mothers like, can we do this? And then we'll agree. So what I very quickly understood, and this is why the construct was different, is that because I was a columnist for a very long time. I was writing a column called Man Talk, which was then seen as a very abrasive, you know, pro-male sort of column. But what I was actually challenging is I came from a reality where we're always in collaboration. Men and women were very clear about what their roles were. Yeah, because society was designed in such a way that as you're growing up as a man, you're just, though your role was set out, it was clear. As a woman, it was set out. Then now we come into this new reality, which is an urban reality, and suddenly you're socialized as a breadwinner. Then suddenly you can't earn money for one reason or the other, you know, or perhaps your industries your industries are dead, and there's no advancements as a man. So then you start to hear this dislocation that happened to men in terms of very competition because of how we identify ourselves as very small pillars. The biggest being just financial, you know, financial, and then as a result, everything else flows around it. So the moment you take the money away from the man, he's dislocated, he's gone, and so then it becomes competition. And then you have sort of women rising, and the narrative that's been sold to us is that if women rise, men will, this is I have a problem, this boy child, girl child dichotomy, this sort of separation. First of all, children are children, children are children. At this point when we start separating children according to genders, there's already a problem with that, you know, because children are children, you know, just treat them as children. So what we've created then from a very young age, because we run into it at campus level, where suddenly there's competition. And we're like, oh, what, if the girls on campus graduate, you need to be able to date them because that means they'll be earning more money than you. And suddenly collaboration just stopped. The false illusion, that's why a lot of my generation tend to get married a lot later, because we came from the belief system that you have to be financially stable in order to attract a worthy partner, right? And those are just sort of false realities, which I think need to be challenged, because what we have adopted as a system is that it's a system that's grounded on individualism, where the individual is the give all and take all of everything. Yet what we came from, our society in the old days, was that the reason why you could get married at 25 was because there's an uncle who would provide you a bride price, there's somebody who would provide you a first bed. There's a whole support system. And the idea is that as you grew older, you'd come into a position of strength, and you do the same for those who are starting off. Right now, you're being told you're on your own. So we have in a city of 4 million people, the highest number of single and lonely women I've ever found ever. Single and lonely men ever found ever. Yet there's all these people in the society.
Yeah.
So
is there any way that you're choosing to raise Talo differently, or are you at this point not
in a way,
concerned?
in a way, you have to sort of create your ideal universe. It's bringing up children as an immigrant in a country where everybody just has secular values, and you decide, in my house we're going to be Christians, right? Or we're going to be Islamic, we're going to have certain values. It's like creating a universe for the child that they have a strong reference point. So what for example, and I pick the example of my own parents, they created a universe for me that created a very sort of strong identity and responsibility in terms of my role as a father and a man. And so that even when I find dislocation in a city like this, now that I'm a Nairobi resident, I always have a reference point. And so for me, that's what's important, that within my girl's universe, we create an ideal reality that protects her from the worst of the world, but also prepares her for that reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so my last question as we wrap up is sort of paying homage to something that a lot of mothers go through, and that is a sense of mom guilt. Whether it's because they want to pursue their passion, they're pursuing their career, whatever the case, they feel like they're not doing enough. But it's something that's plagued a lot of women for a long time. And I'm curious as to know if dads ever experienced dad guilt, if you have ever experienced at any point a sense of guilt for not being present enough or good enough, whatever good enough even means. Is that something that's ever plagued you at all? We can start with you, Abel.
The other day, my daughter sat me down and she had to make a number of confessions. And actually that was one. Because she, as much as I brag of having been around for her all the time, there are some decisions she made in her life based on my absence. And she said, Dad, you're not there during that time. I needed you more. And here I am broadcasting all over that I've been there for my daughter, and there's no single time. But she said it, and I felt really guilty. She said, Dad, you know why I did this? I never had anyone to share with. And that really hit me, that I actually was not there all the time. And it's actually a matter of timing, matter of studying your child and getting to know when actually need to talk to you. Like, you really need to know if there's something wrong with them or not. Like, usually you'd agree with me that it's not easy to know whether a lady is okay or not, because when you ask her if she's okay, she'll always say, yes, I'm okay.
I'm fine.
But you need to push further and know actually if she's really okay or not. Because if she says, I am okay, she's not okay. If she's not okay, she's okay, she will explain. But if she doesn't explain, so that's what I missed out.
Wow.
So every time I said, sweet, are you okay? Yes, Dad, I'm okay. Then I'm okay. Okay, let's do homework.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yes.
I applaud you, Abel, for being able to sit through that. I can't imagine. You know, not a lot of people have the capacity to sit and hear something so difficult and take it in, acknowledge it, and be able to move past it. So the fact that you were able to do that for her, I'm sure she's so proud of you.
But dad guilt,
yeah, 8 months in, have you experienced any dad guilt?
God, she's not yet. She hasn't learned to articulate yet.
Yeah.
I suspect she'll be quite vocal when she does.
Yeah.
But what I can say to that though is I think the realization that we're all growing, and you're all growing. You know? So there will be some elements of regret in life, huh? But I think it's how we choose to look at it. Because I think I made the decision to look at them, as opposed to look at them as regret, as opposed to lessons. Because you start to realize very quickly, at least as you get older, that your supposed worst times, your worst decisions, end up being some of your greatest lessons, your greatest teachings, you know. So I stopped looking at the bad times as bad times, though it just is, you know. So there's a philosophy of reality as it is, as opposed to how we want it to be. So we have this expectation of how we want reality to be in this sort of perfect, my child should go this way. Then there's reality as it is. So once you come to the point of acceptance of that, wow, the nature of life is, you know, it's like the weather. It's good, it's bad, you know. Some days it's bright and sunny, some days it's just, there's nothing you can do about it, at least. And so then there's less of a guilt burden. It's just to realize this is the process of growth, and I shall continue to grow. And as a result of this 40 years plus of my life and the numerous mistakes I have made, how can I become a better? Yeah. So the thing is, what do I do? There's the philosophy of 1%. You watch a child grow, every week they change. As adults, we sort of stop changing. We stop the improvement. So once you make the conscious decision that, hey, what am I doing to change this week? So that if Abel meets me 2 weeks from now, he's like, oh, you've changed kidogo.
Things are different, yeah.
Yeah, things are different. Somehow we stop growing at some point. And that's what creates a lot of the guilt and regret that we sort of end up carrying.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish a lot of moms could rationalize so beautifully, so perfectly, and be like, no, it's just lessons, it's growth. Yeah. But thank you both. Thank you both for being very honest and sharing your journey with us. And happy Father's Day. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our show has come to an end. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you got to learn something new or different about fatherhood or about parenting in general in this day and age. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, right? I'll catch you there. Thank you to Park Inn by Radisson for lending us your beautiful space. And have a great rest of the week. Remember to be present with your children, okay? Greatest lesson, I think, from today. Be present. Bye, everybody.